The man's voice cut through the quiet of the diner like a sharp blade. Wheelchairs should stay at home, not bother others. Then, without warning, one of them shoved Linda's wheelchair, sending her crashing to the floor, her belongings scattered in every direction. But just 30 minutes later, the sound of a military Humvee screeching to a halt outside silenced the room. 3 Marines walked in, their presence commanding the attention of everyone. Not a single word was spoken, but the intensity of their gaze instantly subdued the entire diner. Have you ever witnessed humiliation turn into honor? Comment respect. If you believe honor always finds its way back. Linda Rose sat quietly in her usual corner of Montana's welcome home diner. Her scarred hands were folded neatly in her lap. At 48, the former Marine Staff Sergeant bore the marks of battle, both visible and invisible. An IED explosion in Afghanistan had taken her left leg, but the deeper scars, the ones that ran far beneath her skin, were hidden behind eyes that had witnessed too much death. The warm, golden light of the afternoon poured through the dusty windows, casting long, soft shadows across the diner's worn floor. Linda adjusted her prosthetic leg beneath her faded jeans, grimacing as phantom pain from her missing limb sent a sharp jolt through her. Though it was constant, she had learned to live with it, despite everything. She continued working part-time at the diner, holding on to a routine that helped keep the darkness at bay. She cherished the quiet moments between rushes when the diner seemed to pause, breathing in peaceful stillness. The owner, Mike, had hired her without a second thought. With a firm handshake, he welcomed her to the team, offering nothing but respect. No questions about her missing leg, no pity, just a mutual understanding between two veterans. But that peace was shattered when the bell above the door rang sharply. For men stormed in, reeking of whiskey and entitlement. Their voices were unnecessarily loud. Linda stiffened instinctively, recognizing the leader of the group, Jack Winters, a dishonorably discharged Army private with a reputation for tormenting anyone he deemed weaker. "Well, look what we have here," Jack sneered, elbowing his friends as he spotted Linda. "It's the half-soldier on wheels." Linda kept her head down, her hands methodically folding napkins for the dinner service. 18 years of military discipline had taught her when a battle was worth engaging in, and this wasn't one of them. "Didn't think they'd let cripples handle food," Jack continued, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Pretty sure that's against health codes." The other patrons shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. The young waitress behind the counter glanced at Linda with concern, but quickly turned her attention to scrubbing the countertops. Linda wheeled herself to a nearby table, collecting empty coffee cups with practiced efficiency. "Can I get you gentlemen menus?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension building inside her. Jack sprawled across the booth, taking up more space than necessary. "Sure thing, Wills." "Roll it over quick," he said, his friend snickering on cue. As Linda turned to walk away, Jack's voice dropped to a mock whisper, meant to carry across the room. "How'd a woman even get into the Marines? Some diversity quota." Linda's grip on her wheelchair tightened, her knuckles whitening, but she didn't react. Combat had taught her to recognize when a fight was worth it, and this wasn't one of those times. "I serve with females," Jack continued, his voice growing louder with each word. "Dead weight. All of them. Women like you are why our military's gone soft." Linda returned with the menus and placed them carefully on the table. "Today's special is meatloaf," she said evenly. Jack's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist tightly, enough to bruise. Linda's eagle, globe, and anchor tattoo, one that symbolized her devotion to the Marine Corps, was visible beneath the rolled sleeve of her shirt. "So you really were a jarhead?" Jack sneered. "Let me guess, office duty, filing papers while the real soldiers fought." "Remove your hand," Linda said, her voice calm but with underlying steel that carried the weight of years of training. Jack smirked, releasing her with a dismissive shove. "Or what? You'll run me over?" he taunted. "Women like you are why America can't win wars anymore. Playing soldier until it gets rough, then coming home for special treatment." Linda took a deep breath, measuring it like she'd been taught. Inhale, hold for 4 counts. Exhale. She steadied herself. I'll give you time with the menus, she said, pivoting her wheelchair. But Jack wasn't finished. As she turned, he suddenly thrust his boot forward, blocking her path. Did I dismiss you, Marine? Stand at attention when I'm talking. With practiced skill, Linda maneuvered around the obstruction, not a word escaping her lips. Your server will be with you shortly, she said, her voice steady. Jack called after her, his tone dripping with malice. Wheelchair warriors should stay home. If you can't stand on your own 2 feet, don't make it everyone else's problem. His friends erupted in cruel laughter that bounced off the diner's walls. One of them, a heavy-set man with a patchy beard, lurched his feet and staggered toward Linda. We're talking to you. Soldier girl, he slurred, grabbing the handles of her wheelchair without permission. Before Linda could react, he violently shoved a chair forward. The wheelchair slammed into a table's edge, tipping over and sending Linda crashing to the hard floor. Hot coffee from a nearby table splashed across her clothes, and her prosthetic leg twisted painfully beneath her. The diner froze in horrified silence. No one moved. No one helped. The only sound was Jack and his friend's laughter, punctuated by the sharp hiss of Linda's intake of breath. Linda lay on the floor, feeling the cold surface against her palms, the scalding coffee soaking through her clothes, and the crushing weight of public humiliation pressing down on her chest. For the first time since Afghanistan, she felt utterly vulnerable. The silence in the diner hung thick and heavy, broken only by Jack's occasional snorts of laughter. Linda's personal items lay scattered across the floor. Her worn leather wallet, a carefully folded handkerchief, and a faded photograph that had slipped from her pocket. The edges of the picture were soft from constant handling. It showed Linda standing proudly in her dress blues, surrounded by her Marine unit, before the IED had changed everything. With mechanical precision, honed by years of adapting, Linda pulled herself upright. Her upper body, strong from years of compensating for her missing leg, was a testament to her resilience. She reached for her overturned wheelchair, grunting with effort as she righted it. No one moved to help. Several patrons quickly averted their eyes, pretending to study the tabletops or the dregs of their coffee cups. Others whispered behind their hands, "Someone should do something. Not our business." So uncomfortable to watch. Linda's face remained a disciplined mask, betraying nothing. Every Marine learns that showing weakness can be fatal. She gathered her scattered belongings, her movements deliberate despite the burning pain of the coffee soaking through her clothes. The faded Marine Corps jacket she wore, the one she rarely took off, bore a small, nearly worn-out emblem on the breast pocket. It was still visible to those who knew its significance. From behind the counter, Melissa, a newly hired waitress barely out of high school, started forward with clean towels. But the manager, Dave, quickly intercepted her, grabbing her elbow. "Don't," he muttered under his breath. "They're paying customers. We don't need trouble." "But she works here," Melissa protested, confusion written across her young face. "Part-time only," Dave replied, his voice low but firm. "Those guys come in every week. Big spenders when they're happy. Just take their drink orders and keep it moving." Linda finally settled back into her wheelchair, her dignity intact but her shoulders rigid with the strain. She wheeled herself away, her every movement a testament to the strength she carried with her, no matter how others tried to tear her down. Linda wheeled herself back to her corner table, not bothering to order another coffee to replace the one now staining her clothes. She sat motionless, one hand drifting to her chest, where her service medals once hung. At a nearby table, a young boy, around 8 years old, watched the scene with wide, troubled eyes. He sat with his parents, his father wearing a Veterans Association jacket adorned with Desert Storm patches and ribbons. "Dad," the boy whispered, tugging his father's sleeve. "Is that lady a soldier too? Like you were?" The father studied Linda for a long moment. His expression shifted as he noticed a Marine Corps emblem on her jacket. His jaw tightened visibly as he glanced from Linda to Jack's table of laughing men. "Yes, Tommy," he finally answered, his voice thick, and from the looks of it, a real one. He stood abruptly, phone already in hand. "Excuse me," he told his wife. "I need to make a call." As he strode purposefully toward the door, his phone pressed his ear, his voice carried back into the diner. "Hey, it's Lieutenant Crawford. Listen, I need to report something to the old unit. You're not going to believe what I just witnessed." Inside, Linda remained still, her mechanical hand gently adjusting her frayed sleeve. Her 1,000-yard stare was fixed on the window, where the late afternoon light illuminated the diner's weathered sign. "Welcome home, Diner of the Brave." Jack's voice rose again from across the room. "Hey, half-soldier, my coffee is getting cold. Don't they teach you to serve the Marines?" Linda didn't flinch. She didn't need to respond. The diner door swung open just then, exactly 30 minutes after Linda had hit the floor. The unmistakable growl of a military Humvee engine cut through the uncomfortable murmur of a diner. The massive vehicle, painted in desert tan with the Marine Corps insignia clearly visible, pulled up directly in front of the entrance, its tires crunching aggressively on the gravel. The door swung open with military precision. 3 Marines entered in perfect formation. 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing impeccable service uniforms that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The first was a barrel-chested master sergeant with steel-gray hair cropped regulation short. He walked with a slight limp, carrying a polished oak cane. Behind him came a younger Marine, pushing an empty wheelchair. The third was a female captain, her uniform adorned with combat ribbons and medals that silently testified to multiple tours in the world's most dangerous places. They didn't utter a single word. They didn't need to. Their presence commanded immediate attention, and a heavy silence blanketed the diner as they moved with synchronized purpose directly to Linda's corner table. The master sergeant stopped before Linda, drew himself to perfect attention despite his injured leg, and delivered a textbook salute. "Staff Sergeant Rowe," he said. "Forgive our delayed response, ma'am." Linda's military training took over instinctively. She straightened in her wheelchair, shoulders squaring, her hand rising in a crisp return salute. The defeated look in her eyes vanished, replaced by a spark of something long dormant. "At ease," she said, her voice stronger and more commanding than anyone in the diner had ever heard from her. "Melissa," the young waitress hurried over, smoothing her apron nervously. Should I clean the table for you all?" The female captain nodded once. "4 coffees, please. Black." At Jack's table, the laughter had died. The men shifted uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by their drink glasses. Master Sergeant Wilson spoke to Linda, without lowering his voice, ensuring that every word carried throughout the now silent diner. "Lieutenant Crawford contacted us," he said. "Said one of our finest was being disrespected on civilian ground." The captain's calculating gaze swept the diner, lingering for a moment on Jack and his friends. The captain's gaze lingered momentarily on Jack and his companions. "The lieutenant specifically mentioned individuals who physically assaulted a decorated combat veteran in a wheelchair," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "It's nothing," Linda murmured, though she adjusted her prosthetic leg beneath the table with a quiet determination. "With respect, Staff Sergeant," Master Sergeant Wilson replied firmly. "It is not nothing. Nobody pushes one of ours. Not in combat, not in civilian territory." The younger Marine cleared his throat before speaking up. "Staff Sergeant Rowe led our unit through Kandahar when everything went sideways. She saved my life and 4 others when our convoy hit that IED cluster." Linda's eyes flashed with recognition. "Corporal Jenkins, you were barely 20, still green." He smiled tightly, remembering. "Yes, ma'am, but I never forgot what you taught us. Marines move as one or not at all." As these words echoed throughout the diner, something remarkable began to unfold. An elderly man wearing a Korean War veteran cap slowly rose to his feet. Standing at attention, a middle-aged woman with an Air Force pin on her jacket stood from a back table. 3 National Guard members in civilian clothes rose in silent solidarity. Lieutenant Crawford, the boy's father, returned from outside and called out a single command: "Attention!" Nearly half the patrons in the diner stood, their backs straight, shoulders squared, offering respect without a word. Linda's eyes widened in surprise. The moment was overwhelming. At Jack's table, the uncomfortable silence deepened. The man who had pushed Linda's wheelchair seemed to shrink into his seat. Jack, who had once displayed bravado, now stared into his coffee, his earlier confidence evaporating like morning dew. Master Sergeant Wilson turned his steely gaze toward their table. The Corps teaches us to fight with honor, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to never, under any circumstances, leave a Marine behind. His voice carried, unwavering in its authority earned through decades of service. Some wear the uniform but never truly understand what it means to serve. The captain placed a hand on Linda's shoulder. Staff Sergeant Rowe lost her leg pulling 3 Afghan children from a burning vehicle after an IED strike. She earned the Bronze Star with Valor, 23 years of distinguished service to her country. Linda shook her head slightly. That's enough, Captain. That life is behind me. With respect, Staff Sergeant, the captain replied. The Corps is never behind you. Semper Fidelis isn't just a motto. Dave, the diner manager, approached their table. Earlier indifference had been replaced with nervous deference. Your meals are on the house today, for all of you, he said. Master Sergeant Wilson met his gaze evenly. Marines pay our debts, sir. Always have, always will. The meal that followed was subdued but dignified. Linda sat tall in her wheelchair, surrounded by her fellow Marines, occasionally sharing a small smile or a nod at some memory only they understood. Around them, the diner slowly returned to its normal activity, though many patrons stopped by their table to offer quiet thanks for their service. Jack and his friends paid their bill in silence and left without making eye contact with anyone. As they departed, Corporal Jenkins called after them, "Semper Fi, gentlemen." His tone made it clear the phrase was both a greeting and a warning. As the evening shadows lengthened, Linda spoke more than she had in months. With her comrade beside her, memories surfaced, both painful and proud. She described Afghanistan's mountains at dawn, the camaraderie of shared missions, and the vigilance that became second nature in war zones. Remember Helmand Province? Master Sergeant Wilson chuckled. When that sandstorm hit and you navigated us back to base using just the stars and pure stubbornness? Linda's lips curved slightly. Anyone would have done the same. No, the captain interrupted firmly. Not anyone. That's why you earned those stripes. As closing time approached, the Marine prepared to leave. The master sergeant placed a business card on the table, with a phone number written on it 1 week later. The Welcome Home Diner revealed its new sign. The weathered old board had been replaced with a freshly painted display that read, "Diner the Brave. Every soldier has a place here." Inside, the transformation was subtle yet profound. Photographs of local veterans now lined one wall, each image proudly displaying their service branches and years of service. At Linda's corner table, a small brass plaque had been permanently affixed, reading "Reserved for Veterans." Linda still arrived for her regular shifts, still folded napkins, and served coffee with her usual quiet efficiency. But now, she wore her Marine Corps pin openly on her collar, and her wheelchair proudly displayed a small Marine Corps flag attached to the back. The booth where Jack and his friends had once sat remained conspicuously empty. Regular customers seemed to avoid it, as if by unspoken agreement. Instead, veterans of all ages began gravitating toward tables near Linda's corner, offering respectful nods without intruding on her space. Lieutenant Crawford and his family became Saturday regulars. His son, Tommy, often brought hand-drawn pictures for Linda, crayon figures of soldiers standing beside a smiling stick figure in a wheelchair, all beneath a brightly colored sun. "Is this supposed to be me?" Linda asked one morning, studying the colorful artwork. Tommy nodded seriously. "Dad says you're a hero. Heroes should smile more." Linda's lips curved into what might have been her first genuine smile in years. "Your dad sounds like a wise man. He says," Tommy added, repeating his father's lesson, "what you do matters more than what you say. And that real strength isn't about having 2 good legs." In the parking lot, a desert tan Humvee now appeared regularly every Thursday evening. Master Sergeant Wilson, Captain Rodriguez, and Corporal Jenkins would arrive precisely at 1800 hours for their weekly meal with Linda. They never discussed what had happened that first day. They didn't need to. Instead, they shared coffee and memories, occasionally falling into the comfortable silence of those who had faced death together and emerged forever changed but unbroken. The diner itself had subtly transformed. What was once just another roadside eatery had become something more, neutral ground where the military-civilian divide narrowed over cups of coffee and shared meals. Veterans who had previously kept to themselves now found camaraderie in a corner booth. Civilians who had never served began to recognize the quiet signs of sacrifice in the people they passed daily. Dave, the manager, who had once prioritized paying customers over basic decency, now greeted each veteran personally. He'd replace his casual attire with pressed shirts and a tie, adorned with a small American flag pin on his lapel. The changes weren't just cosmetic. Dave had hired 2 more veterans as staff members and established a monthly dinner where local service members ate for free. Melissa, the young waitress, had asked Linda to teach her about military rank structure and protocol. She now recognized different service insignias and understood which questions were appropriate to ask returning soldiers and which subjects to respectfully avoid. One evening, as Linda's Thursday dinner with her fellow Marines concluded, a young man in a crisp new Army uniform entered the diner. He stood hesitantly just inside the door, clutching his cap, clearly a stranger to the town. Linda wheeled over to him. "First deployment?" she asked quietly. He nodded, visible relief washing over his face at being acknowledged. "Ship out tomorrow morning, ma'am." Linda gestured to the empty chair at their table. "Join us. Coffee's decent and the company's better. I wouldn't want to intrude on your—" "You're not intruding," Linda interrupted with a warm, inviting smile. "We've all been there." "Soldier," she interrupted gently, "you're a continuing tradition." As the young recruits settled at their table, Master Sergeant Wilson raised his coffee cup in a silent toast. Around the diner, other veterans, identified by their caps, pins, or simply by the way they carried themselves, raised their cups in response. No words were exchanged, but none were needed. The gesture spoke volumes. "You are seen. You are one of us. You will never stand alone." The town itself seemed to have changed. Linda had been invited to speak at the local high school about her service. And after years of silence, she found herself sharing stories with teenagers. Not combat or injury, but a discipline, purpose, and the unbreakable bonds forged under pressure. "The uniform isn't what makes you a Marine," she told them. "It's standing tall when it would be easier to crumble. It's carrying weight for someone who can't bear it alone. It's remembering that your actions reflect not just on you, but on everyone who stands beside you." Local business owners began offering military discounts they'd never considered before. The town council approved funds for a small veterans memorial in the park. A weekly support group for returning service members started meeting in the community center. 6 months after that fateful day, a reporter from a regional newspaper visited to write about the diner's transformation into an unofficial veterans hub. Linda reluctantly agreed to an interview but refused to discuss the incident that had sparked it all. "Some battles aren't worth remembering," she said simply. "Focus on what came after." What came after was a community transformed by the ripple effects of both cruelty and kindness, a powerful reminder that indifference enables hatred, while solidarity builds strength. Jack Winters never returned to the diner. Rumors circulated that he'd moved to another town after losing his job. Something about conduct unbecoming when his employer discovered what had happened. Linda never asked about him. She had more important things to focus on, like the young female Army recruit who sought her out for advice before shipping off to basic training, or the Vietnam veteran who finally found the courage to wear his service medals again after decades of keeping them hidden in a drawer. Outside, golden sunlight bathed the Montana mountains as evening approached. Long shadows stretched across the diner's parking lot, where the old Humvee waited patiently. A handwritten note remained taped to its windshield. "We always come back for those who never quit." As darkness fell, the diner's windows glowed warmly, illuminating the diverse faces gathered inside. Young recruits facing uncertain futures, aging veterans with stories etched in their weathered faces, and Linda, sitting tall in her wheelchair, finally home in a world that had once seemed determined to push her aside. The brass plaque on her table caught the light, its simple message reflecting a profound truth. In this place, at least, no one would be forgotten. No one would stand alone. Every soldier had an honor place at the table, wheelchair or not. The greatest battles Linda had learned weren't always fought on foreign soil. Sometimes they happened in small-town diners, where the weapons were words, and the victory came not from defeating enemies, but from standing firm in who you are, even when the world tries to knock you down. Not everyone who wears a uniform understands the word honor, but those who maintain their dignity when humiliated, they are the ones worthy of our deepest respect. I never want anyone to be left behind. Everyone deserves to be heard and respected. If you believe that too, please comment respect to show you stand for kindness and justice. Don't forget to subscribe to Talus Ranked to spread more stories that touch the heart.